Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of Walk in Faith. I'm sitting down with Anthony DeStefano, who is a local New Jerseyan. I guess we could say it that way. You only live a few miles away, and it's wonderful to be sitting down with you again. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you for having me. I'm from Brooklyn though, from Brooklyn, New York. So I made that little hop over, but I'm still a New Yorker at heart.
Same here. I went from Brooklyn to New Jersey. We skipped over Staten Island. My mom actually stopped in Staten Island, but I am very happy to be in the state of New Jersey. So
Me
just like you.
too. Me too.
So you sent me a new book, Christmas in Heaven, which I
Hmm.
love, and it's interesting because I've always enjoyed your books. You've sent me a bunch, which, like I said, I'm extremely grateful. I read most of them, especially the children's books, but then I also read a few of your other sort of novels. And when I came across this one right away, I was sort of drawn to it. And I was talking to my son the other, he was only 8, and so he sort of resonated, and I resonated with the character in the book. But it's interesting because as I'm talking to him, especially during the Christmas season, those questions come up. My father died recently, about a year ago, I should say. And the other day we're riding bikes in Jersey, and he's telling me how he's my dad, like he sort of embodied my father. And he's 8, so he doesn't really understand, exactly what he's saying. But it was interesting. And as I'm reading this, and I'm like, this is the season where, like, for instance, my son will ask me, like, what is Grandpa doing in heaven, and is Grandpa able to celebrate? It was like all these questions that come up. And then when I got this book, and right away you go into it in great detail, especially the opening sort of statement about note to readers on purgatory. So I'm reading this and I'm like, you've written a lot about these subjects, and I was drawn to it. And I wanted to know, why did you sort of, or what inspired you to write this book?
Well, you said a lot of things there that we should probably discuss, grieving, death, and all of that. It's very, very important for children for us not to sweep these sad feelings that they have under the rug because they don't go away. They grow, they fester. We'll talk about that. As far as this book goes, I'm always looking to write books on the true meaning of Christmas because Christmas has obviously been secularized almost beyond recognition. And I've already written several books showing the nativity from different points of view, from the Star of Bethlehem, Grumpy Old Ox, Joseph's Donkey. I wanted to try something different this time. When I was a kid, I don't know about you, when I was a kid growing up in Brooklyn, I didn't really understand why we gave presents at Christmas time and we didn't give them on Easter or Thanksgiving or Halloween. And I remember asking my father about this when I was really young, maybe 7 or something like that, younger than your son, I think. And the way he explained it to me was that Christmas was Jesus' birthday. And
Hmm.
since we couldn't give presents to Jesus because Jesus is in heaven, we could give each other presents, and that's what made Jesus happiest. And that was a very easy concept to understand because all kids understand birthdays and gift giving at birthdays. So this idea has been, running around in my mind for a few years. The question is how to make it into a story. And the way I finally figured out how to do that was to have a little boy who's sad because his grandmother has died, as you said, and it's Christmas time, and he's wondering how they're celebrating Christmas in heaven. And so his grandfather, who is the husband of the woman who has died, sits the boy on his knee and tries to paint a consoling picture for him of heaven and the big celebration that's going on there with all the angels and the saints and of course Our Lady and Jesus and yes his grandmother too. So that's the genesis of the book. It's a book about the true meaning of Christmas, an introduction to the angels and saints, and about grieving with hope in the resurrection and life everlasting in heaven.
Beautiful. And like you said too, like when I do have these conversations with my son, and I think, age appropriate, it's challenging, 8, 7, 5, at that age, like how do you have these conversations, especially during the holidays about, the afterlife, about
Well,
grieving?
well, you know, let me address one thing about that because I think that sometimes parents don't know heaven is a very easy subject to talk about to children, even from a very early age. When you think about it, heaven is just God's home. Okay? When people die and those people love God, they go to live in God's home. They just move homes. They go from their home here on earth to their home in heaven. And that's something all children understand because, they've all been over their grandparents' home and their aunt's home, and they've gone to different buildings to go to school and whatnot. So they understand the concept of moving from place to place. So the more we're able to show children how wonderful a place heaven is, and there are ways to do that too, the more consolation they'll experience when they're grieving about their loved ones who have moved to that place.
Mm, interesting. Yeah, I think for me especially, I think as a father, same. It's always challenging to have those conversations, and it could be just my own sort of fears and doubts, and because I think a lot of us, I mean, we doubt. I mean, like I have this vision of what I perceive and I think heaven is like, and sometimes when I'm trying to explain that to my son, it doesn't always come out the right way, and it's a challenging subject. I mean, you've done so much research on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, heaven is, the thing to emphasize with children and adults is that heaven is real. And after the resurrection, it will have a physical component too. But heaven is not some just cloudy, nebulous place with white and gray, with angels floating around in white robes. I mean, that's a boring picture to paint. The thing is that if the life we're living right now is real, then the life in heaven is not going to be less real than that life. It's not going to be less colorful. It's going to be more colorful. They're going to be colors that we've never even seen before that God has invented. It's not going to be less active, less energetic. There's going to be more activity going on there, more things happening. We're going to see so many people there who have died too. The people throughout history, we're going to be able to meet them, not just our own relatives. And after the resurrection, someday, after we believe that we're going to have our bodies back. They're going to be glorified, they're going to be changed, but they're going to be real bodies. And that means when you see your mother again someday, if your mother has died she's gone to heaven, then you're not just going to be seeing a ghost. You're going to be able to run up to her and hug her and kiss her and feel the warmth of her skin and hear her voice again. Heaven is going to have that kind of physical component to it. And so heaven in many ways is going to be more familiar than we commonly imagine. And I think that's a good starting place for children. Heaven is God's home, and it's going to be even more fun than this life.
Wow. Were you always disconnected in the sense of to heaven and doing the research? Like what happened in your life that sort of drew you even closer to this or to close?
I wasn't religious growing up. We went to church on Christmas and sometimes Easter. We went to public schools. PS 179. I mean, I didn't go to any. But as always, as happens in families, one of us, my kid sister, was religious. All it takes is one, and she brought me along. Then I brought my brother along, and then by the time you know it, my father, before he died, God bless him, he was a daily communicant. He had been an altar boy when he was a kid, but then he left the church because of his mother died. Everybody
Yeah.
leaves the church for different reasons. So one person brought me along, and then just it was God's will. I met a priest when I was in my 20s, and he gave a homily on heaven in which he talked about how heaven was going to be physical and not just spiritual after the resurrection. And it so happened that in one of those years in my 20s, I had to go to something like 15 funerals in one year. Just a lot of people were dying in my family. And I noticed that the priests or the pastors who were preaching didn't preach on this very consoling doctrine that we were going to see these people again for real. So I've always had this interest in heaven because I think if people meditated on heaven just a few minutes a day, it would radically change their lives.
Wow, I love that. Thank you for explaining that too. And then throughout the book, like as I'm reading this and I'm looking at all the different saints, and then as I'm reading, I was like, this would be amazing if there was in the end there was sort of like a summary of each one. And of course, you added that, which was brilliant. And I'm looking at Martha, and right away, I'm seeing her. She's cleaning and cooking, and I'm like, how come she didn't say anything to Saint Thomas Aquinas? Like, because he's sitting there reading. I'm like, because that's her. That's what we know
Well,
her.
I wanted to get as many saints and angels as I could in this book. I try to include the famous ones because I want this book to be an introduction to the saints and angels. But everything has to do with the story. Everything is dictated by the story. So I have people and the saints in the book doing the things they're famous for. And because it's such a serious subject that deals with death and grieving, I also wanted the way I wanted it to take a light approach was to sort of humorously portray some of the saints. And St. Martha happens to be some of the comic relief in the book. I call her the Rodney Dangerfield of saints because she doesn't get any respect. She's always cooking and cleaning. Even Jesus scolded her for that. And so in this book, she's constantly cleaning. And at one point, St. Francis of Assisi barrels in with all these animals, and she's trying to sweep, and she's not able to do it. So St. Jude, who's the patron saint hopeless causes comes with a vacuum cleaner to help her. So it's this lighthearted kind of approach to the saints that I think makes it easier, will make it easier for children to deal with the heavier subjects in a more positive way.
No, I agree. And it opens up that conversation like St. Martha, and Martha is someone I always recite. For me to now sit down with my son and explain who St. Martha is or St. Thomas or I mean there's at least 15 different saints in the book, and the illustrations, like I said, are beautiful. Really great job. So I mean, we've gotten older obviously. So how has Christmas changed for you since from when you say grew up in Brooklyn to now?
I think the main difference is that I have gotten more religious myself. I mean, I when I was a kid, I wasn't. It was all about toys, and we believed in Santa when we were growing up. Didn't particularly hurt us. I mean, my youngest brother is a Catholic priest in the Archdiocese of New York. My brothers, we're all pretty religious. But I think as I've gotten older, and I've realized how important our faith is. I've tried to really make Advent an important time. I've tried to make it where I really am waiting for Jesus to come. And then I've also tried to extend the celebration of Christmas because Christmas isn't just one day. Try to make it for the whole Christmas season. So I've tried to make Christmas richer, but it's hard. As rich as you can make Christmas, it's really hard to to beat the magic when Christmas is when you're a little kid, of course, because then I mean with all the colors and the sounds and the lights and the toys and you're an innocent child. It's I think one of the reasons why I try to write these Christmas books is because I want to make sure that that children not only have the magical Christmas that we all had when we were kids, but that they have some awareness that it's Jesus's birthday. Not like me growing up where I didn't have any understanding really.
No, I agree. And it's funny, my son says that to me all the time because we decorate a lot. Like if you drive around and I'm one of those houses where people drive by and there's just
Yes.
everywhere. And we make sure that we have multiple spots in our yard where there's either nativity or something religious. Because like you said, like the true meaning of Christmas is not just about all the presents. And we see how society continuously removes Jesus from, or Jesus' birthday or the birth of Christ from anything. It becomes a very secular holiday. I go to Lowe's, I can get anything religious on sale, right? Any religious sort of decorations. It's not as growing up, like you said, it was a little bit different. But
I want to say what you're saying is very important. It's one of the reasons why I write these children's books too, because there has been a systematic attempt by the secular culture to take away our most sacred holidays and transform them into almost pagan rituals,
yes.
and without any Christian teaching. And it's not just Christmas; it's Easter too. With the Easter bunny.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's Halloween. All Hallows Eve is the night before All Saints Day and 2 days before All Souls Day. It's a very religious holiday, and it's been turned into purely a celebration of monsters and goblins. So, in trying to write for children, not only am I trying to entertain them and impart theologically correct messages, but where possible, I want to do my little part to take back what is ours, to reclaim what is ours from the secular culture.
Oh, you are right. I mean, listen, if they could find a way of making money off of Easter, the society or merchandise, and they can create a new holiday or a new way of creating, merchandise, they would. I mean, Christmas, I mean, we see it's lost its there's a part of it that's sort of lost because it's all about, like you said earlier, about the gifts and buying and overspending, and you miss really the true meaning of what Christmas is. But I commend you for writing these books because it allows me to sit down with my son and I can read this throughout the year. It's not just something I would read only on Christmas because the message is clear. And this conversation happens all the time with my son, all the time with, relatives. And it's also something I reflect on too. In Purgatory, in that beginning statement, it's something that we think about. And you say it very clearly that we should continue to pray for our loved ones, regardless of where they might be. We constantly need to pray for them. Why did you add the Purgatory sort of that paragraph?
Well, because I didn't want to give the impression that I don't believe in purgatory. Purgatory is a doctrine of the Catholic Church. It's been a doctrine since the very beginning. It's based on the fact that, as Revelation 21 says, nothing unclean can enter heaven. The fact is that there are people who have died. They've been saved by Christ, but they still have on their souls some stain of sin that has already been forgiven. And sometimes these souls might have an attachment to sin, and purgatory is the place where we're cleansed of those imperfections so that we can see God face to face without any shame or guilt or attachment to what is unholy. We've all been to funerals where, the person who's died is being not only eulogized, but canonized. And I understand when people do that. I'm sympathetic to them. It's a sad time. But we never want to deprive the people who have died of our prayers because they may need our prayers. And so the way I do it in this book is I put a little note to parents at the beginning and I explain purgatory this way. Look, if you're going to meet the president or the pope, or if you're going to attend a big wedding or a big party of some kind, you would presumably wash your face and comb your hair and maybe change out of your gym clothes. Well, heaven's the biggest party of them all, and we're going to be meeting the most important person of all, the Lord. So purgatory is the place where we get cleaned up for that.
I love that. And now, so what do you hope people walk away with, whether it's parents and children or, together? What do you hope they walk away with after reading this book?
I think three things. First of all, the true meaning of Christmas, that it's Jesus' birthday. Second, I want children to get at least a glimpse of the world of the saints, which is really a glimpse into, this beautiful doctrine in the church of the communion of saints, which says that there's a lot more to life than just what we see around us. There's a beautiful, invisible spiritual world that's just as important. And finally, I want kids to understand that heaven is a joyful, wonderful place, nothing to be frightened about. Christmas is a magical holiday, but it's also a very sad time of year for many people who have lost loved ones. Suicide rate always goes up at Christmas time.
Yes.
I like to impress upon children that even if people have died in their lives, Christmas can still be joyful because those loved ones are hopefully in heaven. We will get to see them someday. I tell all my atheist friends that the difference between Christians and unbelievers isn't that Christians suffer and grieve any less than them. It's that we suffer and grieve with hope. And that's the main message I'd like to get across to readers.
Oh, I love that. And I agree. I agree with all three, but the second one too, especially like my son, like I said, we're always talking about saints. I love to pray to Saint Jude, and I made a promise to Saint Jude, similar to Danny Thomas. And recently I was blessed. I had Blessed Carlo, a relic in my house. I was delivering to one of the
Mm.
bishops. And
Oh,
coincidentally, you know how that works, right? They said, "Can you deliver this relic?" And I was able to have it in my house for like a week or so. And just to talk to him about Blessed Carlo, and then we were able to bless and have secondhand relics or third class relics. But to be able to talk to him about these saints, especially someone like Blessed Carlo, which I wish obviously he couldn't be in the book at this point, but someone like that is so inspiring, and to be able to see things about him on YouTube and read about him, how
I would
powerful.
have absolutely had I known that he was going to be canonized, I would have put him in the corner on a computer or playing soccer in heaven. I would have had him there for sure. Maybe the next printing
Maybe
of the book, I'll do that.
add him and add for me Father Capodanno, because I believe he's going to be in the
Yes.
book at some point.
Okay, I will.
Anthony, always a pleasure. So now, where could people find out more about the book and reach out to you if they have questions or anything?
I have a webpage. If your listeners, viewers don't mind my long Italian name, www.anthonydestefano.com. I don't sell books on the website, but you could, contact me and find out all my other books. You can get my books pretty much everywhere. I always try to encourage people to go to Catholic and Christian bookstores to patronize those places, but it's on Amazon, EWTN, all those places they get my books.
And like I said, I've read a lot of your books. I think one of the one that always stands out was Hell, and then there was another one about with the suitcase on the cover. I forgot the title of
Travel
that.
Guide to Heaven, my first book.
Yes, I've read a lot of your books and all your children's books, and like I said, we live close by, and I would continue to support you, Anthony. If there's anything you
Thank
need from me, please let me know, and
you. I
and
will.
really pick up this book, Christmas in Heaven. It's fantastic, and it's a great way to just talk about the afterlife, about heaven, about purgatory, about the saints. What a wonderful book, Anthony. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Walk in Faith. Always remember you have the ability to inspire and evangelize through words and actions. God bless you. And pick up Anthony DeStefano's latest book. God bless you.